Good morning and welcome into First Take. I'm Carrie Chow, in for the lovely and talented Carrie Champion. You all know Skip Bayless. And
They better. By now.
And joining us from New York, the one and only Stephen A. Smith. Fellas, good to be here.
So today is your last day on 98.7 FM in New York City, right? So those New York media critics are going to have a lot less to criticize now. I don't know what they're going to do without you on New York radio.
All right, let's talk about your other job, Stephen A. This one right here. Football is here, guys. 6 NFL preseason games last night, including a Super Bowl rematch. And while the scores don't matter, the guys explain why the games still do. Plus, who was Johnny Manziel before Johnny Manziel? One current NFL star has some advice for Mr. Football, but first, we begin with the reigning NBA MVP. Kevin Durant is leaving Team USA. Durant was the best player on the current USA roster and the MVP of the World Championship in 2010. His decision comes less than a week after Paul George went down to a vicious leg injury. Here's Durant's statement. This was an extremely difficult decision as I take great pride in representing our country. I know that I owe it to my USA basketball teammates to be totally invested in the experience. After going through training camp with USAB, I realized I could not fulfill my responsibilities to the team from both a time and energy standpoint. I need to take a step back, take some time away, both mentally and physically, in order to prepare for the upcoming NBA season. Stephen A., we'll start with you. What do you make of the decision?
Well, first of all, I think it was the right decision by Kevin Durant. I don't think anybody can deny that, and I say that with nothing but profound respect for Coach Mike Krzyzewski, along with managing director for Team USA Basketball, Mr. Jerry Colangelo, a man I've admired for many, many years. I think they've done a phenomenal job in resurrecting basketball globally, in terms of the United States participation in Olympic competition. But in the end, the bottom line is that injury to Paul George more than a week ago, about a week ago or so, was just devastating, and it was incredibly scary. And if you're Kevin Durant, you've got a future to think about, not just in terms of your playing career, but your obligations to the team that's paying you in excess of $85 million. That would be the Oklahoma City Thunder. How on earth FIBA has managed to, essentially ostracize teams or prohibit them from having the ability to keep their players from participating in Olympic competition is beyond me, because when the player gets hurt, it's still on their books to have to play these athletes. And in the United States of America, I don't care what anybody says. I said this yesterday on my radio show. I'm going to say it again, Skip. I've got to tell you, when you look at it, certainly there's a level of patriotism that we have. We all know that, particularly in these trying times. We know what time it is. But when you look at other nations, for example, with the World Cup or what have you, it just reaches another level with them. You lose in the United States of America, people are disgusted with you. You lose in other countries in their respective sports. Sometimes people have gotten shot. I mean, it's just on a different level. And so for me, when I look at participation, particularly on the basketball level, do people in the United States care? Sure, when you lose, but when you're winning, it's not that big of a deal. And in the end, they value the NBA season more than they value Olympic competition. Therefore, the obligation and the onus that's on the shoulders of the athlete needs to be towards them as opposed to USA Basketball. I don't blame Kevin Durant one bit. I don't want to say I applaud his decision because you certainly don't want to applaud something like this. But nevertheless, it was necessary because it's a scary proposition. And to be quite honest with you, the only thing I have a problem with here, Skip, is that I think Derrick Rose should have left first before Kevin Durant even thought about it, because Derrick Rose is the one that's only played 10 games in the last 2 years.
You said that a couple of weeks ago. So you're a patriotic man. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Does the Patriot in you have any misgiving about by far the best player on Team USA basically leaving this team high and dry in the 11th hour?
Good question, Skip. The 11th hour is what I have a problem with, not him leaving. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. I'm going to go a step further than you wanted to go. I'm going to applaud Kevin Durant for making a very difficult decision for him. And Stephen A., I don't know what was in his heart of hearts. I don't know what was in his psyche after last Friday night when he had to stand over poor Paul George and look at the broken bone protruding through Paul George's skin. That would shake anybody up to see a compound fracture like that.
Yep.
So I don't know if that was the tipping point here. But you know what? I want to be cold-blooded about this. It did give Kevin the excuse I think he was looking for all along to say, I'm out. He needed to be out. He needed to save himself from himself. Stephen A. Smith, you know this. Over the last 3 years in the NBA, no player has played more combined regular season and playoff minutes than this man, Kevin Durant. I'm here to suggest, believe it or not, he's still only 25 years of age. No 25-year-old, you can say this is hyperbole, but I don't think it is. No 25-year-old in the history of the world has played more basketball than this man has played to date. Because, Stephen A., remember the off-season commercials, the early Nike commercials he did in the van touring the country looking for pickup games? This is the ultimate gym rat. And for those who want to blame him for not being patriotic, just remember, in 2010, his breakout summer, he was the MVP of the World Championships for Team USA in Istanbul. Remember that? In 2012, he led our gold medal winning team in London at the Olympics in scoring and in minutes played. So he served his country and served it well. Now it's about winning championships. I think he knows in his heart of hearts, after what happened in the overtime, that Game 6 loss at home to my San Antonio Spurs when Kevin went scoreless, there's still a lot of work to be done, and the window is starting to close in Oklahoma City. I don't know if it'll reopen for Kevin if he goes home to Washington, as LeBron went home to Cleveland. I don't know that, but it's time to focus on what matters the most. And I don't want to look, I'm very patriotic, as you well know, too. But it doesn't make me prouder of my country that we send our best NBA players over to, quote-unquote, nuke the world. Because I know we have the best basketball in the world. I know it. I get to see it on a nightly basis from, November through June. I get to see it. So, look, I love it when they win. I don't take it that hard when they blew it in 2004 to Argentina. You remember the Larry Brown coach team and why Larry kept LeBron and Melo on the bench. That's a whole other story. But again,
no sense.
Did I want to jump out the window when they lost? No. I know we have the greatest basketball in the world. You can talk about Argentina and Spain and Croatia and God bless them all. We have the best basketball, and I don't need Kevin to go prove it again for us. I'll be fine. And I think our team with, Anthony Davis and Steph Curry and James Harden, I can go on. I think we'll be okay. It'll be close, but can we beat Spain? I still think we can beat Spain, and I'll be just fine if we don't. Life will go on in America, and maybe we can re-up and send better players the next time. But in this case, I look at Kevin, and he needs to rest. Isn't that fair to say? He just needs to rest that body.
It is fair to say, Skip, because in 4 of the last 5 years, Kevin Durant has logged over 3,000 minutes each season. And on top of it all, he's not, since his second year in the league, has he averaged less than 38 minutes per game. That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
But I also would go a step further by saying this, Skip. I'm of the mindset that anybody that's under a max contract is not somebody that should be participating in Olympic competition.
I agree.
And the reason why I feel that way is because FIBA isn't willing to pick up the tab in the event that these guys get hurt. The team is still left holding the bag. And you can't convince me that teams are okay with it. They just have to say they are, because in a court of public relations, they would lose. And so that's incumbent upon us to take the pressure off of NBA teams acting like they would be wrong and unpatriotic for not wanting to take their prime investment and throw it into Olympic competition and endanger their investment. I have no problem with it whatsoever. Our second-tier players can win a gold medal.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
They can.
And let me ask you this. Do you think the Oklahoma City Thunder fans are okay with this morning?
Totally.
Thank you.
Totally.
Next question.
Yeah, we'll leave it at there. You guys mentioned the 11th hour. Team USA's first FIBA World Cup game, August 30th. Let's go to the NFL. We had a Super Bowl rematch last night. The Broncos topped the Seahawks 21-16. Peyton Manning went 10 for 13 for 78 yards. Also led the team to a 14-play, 61-yard touchdown drive on the reigning champs. But it was the first preseason game. So that being said, did that touchdown drive mean anything? Skip.
If ever an early touchdown drive in the first preseason game played by a team was a big deal, this was a very, very big deal. Because I don't have to remind you, who's gone on tirade after tirade, about what happened in the Super Bowl, the beatdown that you talk about so often. Never has a Super Bowl favorite, and Denver was favored by 2.5 over Seattle in the Super Bowl. Never has a favorite been more humiliated and embarrassed than the Denver Broncos were, falling behind 36-0 and finally losing 43-8. And I also remind you, a year ago last summer, it was actually the second preseason game at Seattle. The Seahawks won that game 40-10. And don't discount how much confidence they built from that preseason game that they took into the Super Bowl. Peyton Manning knew this last night. It's why I tuned in and watched all of the first half of this game. Peyton Manning's body language from the start was not preseason body language. It was playoff body language. And in the second drive, after a 3-and-out, they went 14 plays, as Kerry said, 61 yards against the Legion of Boom. And it looked to me like the starters were playing. I'm not sure about that. Looked like they were all in there for the Legion of Boom at that point. 4 third-down conversions, 3 of them to Demaryius Thomas. And it was vintage Peyton Manning. And I think it was crucial to the psyche of that 38-year-old quarterback and that football team that Peyton got back on that horse and rode it all the way to the end zone. Speaking of Denver and their mascot, that worked pretty well, I guess.
Played.
That just came out of nowhere. But Stephen A., big for Denver's psyche.
I will confess to you this, Skip Bayless. If this discussion had taken place before the ESPYs, then I would say this is much ado about nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Who cares? It's the first preseason game, la-di-da. But being at the ESPYs, talking with the Legion of Boom, having Bobby Wagner come on our show, acknowledging publicly that the Denver Broncos, they knew that they were scared and they saw it from the time they participated in preseason. I can't ignore the fact that obviously Denver came out there and wanted to send a message that a new day would arrive, that if they were to meet again, they thought the results would be different. And I give them credit for that because I certainly don't want to dismiss it. I still think based on a beatdown that I witnessed, I wouldn't bet my money against Seattle against them again. It was a preseason game. It's not the Super Bowl. But I do give Denver credit for coming out there on that opening drive and showing what they showed, because the fact that they didn't do it last year during the preseason is what, at least to some degree, emboldened Seattle and elevated their level of confidence come Super Bowl time. When they were watching film, they were talking about how, you know what? All of that's fine. We see what everybody's doing. The difference between us and the folks that they're playing is that we're going to hit them. And when we do, we'll see how they act. That's what Denver didn't realize. That's what Seattle did realize. And a legitimate argument could be made is that's why they're the Super Bowl champions today. So the fact that Denver came out last night and Peyton Manning did what he did with the 14-play, 61-yard drive, I give them credit where credit is due. But I'm not going to get overly hyped about it. I'm not going to engage in that level of hyperbole. It still is preseason, but I guess it's a plus.
I think it was a crucial plus, and I think it was crucial that Peyton didn't get sacked last night. I didn't see what I even call a pressure, and there were no near picks, so it was the flip side of the Super Bowl.
Enlighten me, Skip. Enlighten me. When you use the word crucial, what are you trying to say? That if they were to meet in the Super Bowl again, that the outcome would be different because of what we saw last night? Because I don't know that. I don't know that.
Okay, if it had been 40-10 Seattle and then they meet in the Super Bowl again, it would be the same song, second ugly verse. But I think Denver rebuilt a little confidence. Now, do I think both of them will get back? I don't think either one of them will get back. But Denver had to put that in the bank just for their overall, just their confidence level, even going into the regular season. Because how many times have we talked on the show about, can you get back up off the mat psychologically after that beatdown in the Super Bowl? Not just to play Seattle, to play anybody.
Well, if you're coming to me with Ware and Aqib Talib and Ward and those boys, okay, you might have a point. But to me, last time I checked, the offense is relatively the same. Demaryius Thomas is still there. Julius Thomas is still there. Wes Welker is still there. Peyton Manning is still there. So I'm looking at it from the perspective, how much different are you? Did you get a personality transplant? Is that what transpired? Because last time I checked, Bobby Wagner's still there. It's probably better. Cam Chancellor's still there. Probably better. Richard Sherman's still there. Probably better. All of these guys, I think the only thing that Seattle would have to worry about is themselves. Did you get comfortable? Now that you're getting paid,
maybe.
Are you not going to have the same road runner, rough rider mentality?
Yep.
Are you going to change? But if Seattle is still the same, I think they would have the same impact against Denver.
I keep bringing this up, but Seattle lost Chris Clemens and Red Bryant in their pass rush. Will it be the same that annihilated Peyton in the Super Bowl? And last quick point, Kerry, before we go. You brought up Aqib Talib. I thought it was fitting last night that he did stay home and make a tackle on an end around, and immediately was shown on the sideline shaking his hand. So he's already nicked. He's already nicked. You can't trust the guy. He's not always there when you need him. I learned that when he was in New England.
I can't knock you for that. Can't knock you for that.
Obviously, you always want to score a touchdown. That's always the goal for any offense. But to get 3 points out of 2 drives, I think that's typical of an NFL game.
Geno and I are going to continue to push each other. We're going to support each other. We're going to continue to compete against one another and make each other better. And Geno went out there. He did a great job. We moved the ball. He didn't score, but I think the mistakes that was made was correctable on all ends. And we're going to look for him to do 10 times better next week.
There's Geno and Vick. The Jets beat the Colts 13-10 in both teams' preseason opener. Geno Smith went 4 for 6 for 33 yards and 10 rushing yards, while Michael Vick went 3 for 6 for 17 yards with 19 rushing yards, but a touchdown drive. When determining the Jets' starting quarterback, did last night matter? Stephen A., we'll start with you.
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, first of all, I didn't find either quarterback particularly impressive. I think in the New York Post they worded it best, neither were impressive or unimpressive. I think when you look at it, you're talking about a team with quarterbacks over the last 3 years, starting quarterbacks, Skip Bayless, have thrown 57 interceptions for the New York Jets. That includes Mark Sanchez, by the way, who now is the backup in Philadelphia. But they've 57 interceptions over the last 3 years. They ranked 29th and 30th, respectively, over the last 2 years in yards gained, and I think 29th and 28th in points scored. This offense is anemic. And so when you look at it, I say to myself, what I saw Vick do with his legs, he still has that wow factor. He's still electrifying with his legs. Geno, to me, is going to have to show that he can really, really throw the football. But I didn't see that big of a distance, a discrepancy between Vick and Geno in terms of throwing the football. And I think that's what's going to determine who's going to be the starting quarterback to open the season. I think it's clear when you see the way Vick was able to move the football that he's still better, and he's somebody who probably should be in the starting lineup as your quarterback, Skip. But at the same time, was there that big of a discrepancy to the point where you could risk jeopardizing your future quarterback in Geno Smith if indeed you look at him that way? I don't know the answer to that question as of yet. But clearly, they need to be able to move the chains to take some of the pressure off the defense. And from the looks of it, Vick was a better option than Geno, but only because it's clear that Vick can run the football better, not because either of them were overly impressive throwing the football.
So you saw and learned mostly nothing last night.
Not mostly nothing, because nothing more than I expected. Geno can make some good throws, and then he can make a terrible throw or two, which could cost him. Michael Vick won't necessarily beat you with your arms as much as he's going to beat you with his legs. That's what I saw.
I saw a lot more than you saw. And I think the Jets players and the Jets coaches saw a whole lot more than you saw. And I'm just using the eye test. And I did watch this game also. When Michael Vick set foot on that football field, that offense sprang to a different life than it had been under Geno. I saw a different RPM. I saw a different confidence level in an offense that under Geno looked hesitant at best. Under Geno, and as I watched him try to operate last night, Stephen A., he seemed more bent on trying to avoid making mistakes than making plays. He played like a young quarterback trying not to lose the job instead of to keep it and make a stronger case for himself. He was playing not to lose his job. Michael Vick stepped on the football field and immediately was vintage Vick, trying to make things happen. Now, you can say he really has nothing to lose. Maybe last night was advantage Vick because all he had to do is come in and just let it fly, and if he stunk it up, it really wouldn't matter because he knows he's a second-team quarterback already. But what I saw, and I think his teammates saw and coaches saw again last night, was proof positive that the best win-now answer for the New York Jets is still Michael Vick. He's fresh after a year basically off at age 34. There's still a lot left in that arm. There's quite a bit left in the legs. I didn't see young Vick last night, but I saw wow. And I saw a guy who can make plays with the legs as well as the arm. I wish he'd made more plays with his arm, but he made some big third down conversions. It was impressive what he did, and Geno was thoroughly unimpressive to me. So, again, it's just the first preseason game. I don't care. I think Michael Vick won the battle last night. Maybe he won't win the quote-unquote war, but he won that battle.
Yeah, but I want to be clear. I don't think we disagree. But I'm just saying to you that we're looking at two different things. You're looking at the RPM of the offense and how they seem to gravitate towards him. That's undeniable. But we pretty much knew that would happen, Skip, because Vick has been in the league for 14 years and we know what he's capable of doing, whereas Geno still has a lot to prove coming off a 12-touchdown, 21-interception season. We understand that. But what I'm talking about in terms of just the eye test as it pertains to their individual showcase last night, I'm saying there wasn't that big of a discrepancy. I still roll with Vick because the upside is greater for this season. He has a better chance of moving the chains, and I think it's incumbent upon Geno to really distance himself from Vick in terms of his ability to throw the football, because we know even though he's capable of scampering for yardage, he can't run like Vick can run. He doesn't have the pocket presence that Vick has, and all of those things are problematic. But also last night, one of the reasons why I think you'd give Vick the edge, the offensive line wasn't that impressive.
No, it wasn't.
Now, obviously, you're going to assume that they'll get it together because you got Cologne, you've got Mangold, you've got the Brickashaw, Ferguson, and these boys. There's still some issue at right tackle or whatever, but that's not their blind side, but it would be Vick's blind side. Keep that in mind as well. So you have to really, really watch the right tackle. But in the end, what it comes down to is that Vick is more experienced. Vick is a playmaker. Vick is going to take chances. And you may very well want that if you're the New York Jets, because that's something you haven't had from your quarterback in years under the Rex Ryan era.
Okay, I'm not suggesting that Michael Vick is the long-term answer, but I have my doubts that Geno is the long-term answer either. All I know is Michael Vick, a couple days ago, made a statement that this year you will see a Geno who is 10 times better. Did you see 10 times better last night?
I didn't see 2 times better.
I didn't see 1 time
But
better.
I'm not going to judge him harshly. It's the first game of the preseason. You didn't play that much. I'm not going to judge him that harshly. I'd wait until week 3 or 4 of the preseason in order to do that to Geno personally.
I just need to see some command from Geno that I haven't seen.
Still some time, though. It's just the first preseason game. The Jets kick off the season. Their next preseason game, actually, is Saturday, August 16th. The spotlight shining bright on Johnny Manziel, and Lions running back and former USC star Reggie Bush can relate to all the rookie hype, telling ESPN.com, it reminds me of what I went through, you know. For him, he's going to have to learn how to say no, and that's going to be extremely hard because it's going to be the people closest to you who you're going to have to learn to say no to. When I started dating my ex, that's when all this stuff came, and a lot of it started in college, too. That ex, in case anyone was wondering, is Kim Kardashian, for those who don't know. But anyhow, let's
that
focus
would be a
here.
Distraction.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Kanye West. All right, so should Johnny Manziel listen to Reggie Bush? Stephen A.
I think he absolutely should. First of all, you got to consider the source. Reggie Bush is not somebody who runs his mouth. Reggie Bush is highly respected. He's the kind of individual that doesn't mean any harm to a contemporary or somebody else. He's saying it with his heart in the right place, trying to give words of wisdom, so Johnny Manziel can avoid some of the roadblocks and pitfalls that Reggie Bush himself may have experienced. You're talking about a guy in Reggie Bush that came out of USC, number 2 overall pick. He was big time. You watched him perform in college. He was just a showstopper. He was box office, Skip. And he comes into the NFL, but he not only comes into the NFL with his skill sets and the expectations that it reeked, but also with baggage because he was dating Kim Kardashian. No disrespect to her, but she was drop dead gorgeous. She was a sex symbol, worldwide. And at the same time, she had her own reality show. So you had cameras, invading his personal life. Everywhere he went, where she went, whatever the case may be, it was unwanted attention. And sometimes that distracts you, and it had the NFL folks frowning down upon him because the accusation could be made that his mind and his heart wasn't all invested in football. And that created a lot of question marks, which ultimately led to him being out of New Orleans, ending up in Miami before heading to Detroit. And so if you're Reggie Bush, knowing the kind of person that you are, the kind of heart that you have, and what have you, and you recognize that this was an impediment to your success and your progress, I can do nothing but applaud the brother for being willing to espouse his words of wisdom to Johnny Manziel.
I can't applaud what Reggie said. I respect him, and I respect the essence and the principle of what the words of advice and wisdom he's trying to deliver to Johnny. I just don't think what Reggie went through has much at all to do with what Johnny is going through. I remind you, Reggie dated Kim on and off from 2007 to 2010, and Johnny right now doesn't have a starlet girlfriend demanding his time and his attention and keeping him on an emotional roller coaster ride that Reggie was on through those years. And remember, Reggie went through a rough time in New Orleans after he got drafted. And I'm not being a hypocrite here because I was on the record ahead of the draft. He will never be able to live up being the 2nd player picked overall. A lot of people thought he might be the 1st pick overall. He couldn't run between the tackles for the Saints. He just couldn't quite live up. He was more of a luxury than an every down back that you could sort of hang your helmet on. So he went through a rough time. He still hasn't made a Pro Bowl through 8 seasons in the National Football League. I think Johnny's going to be a bigger star than Reggie ever was, but that's just me. But back to the point, I think Johnny is getting a bad rap for his lack of football dedication. If you know Johnny Manziel, you know that when he works at football, he really, really works at football. And when he parties, he parties. But when it's time to go back to work, he goes back to work. So Reggie, the inference here is that, boy, Johnny's got to watch his friends. They're going to lead him astray. He's got to say no. I think he says no all the time to his friends, and we don't know about that. Charlie Casserly, for whom I have great respect, the former Redskins GM who now works for NFL Network, reported from Browns camp a couple of weeks ago, Johnny Manziel is the first one there every morning and the last to leave. Now, Charlie's not a big fan of Johnny's as a player, but that's a whole other issue. But first in, last out. Let's keep that in mind. So let's not leap to the conclusion that Johnny is not dedicated, that he has a lousy football work ethic. I think it's just the opposite. I'm sorry. I don't like the inference of this.
But the inference, your inference may be a bit misconstrued, Skip. I didn't get that from Reggie Bush. I'm looking at a Reggie Bush that is responding to the things that are being said about Johnny Manziel. and he's reacting accordingly. It's not like he's a teammate, a member of the Browns, in camp watching Johnny and said this. It's not like he's been seen hanging out with Johnny and he said this. What he's saying is from afar, you all are saying this is what's going on in the life of Johnny Manziel. And if that's true, then he might need to say no to folks or whatever the case may be, because this is the kind of thing that can get you in trouble. He's not trying to compare his situation to Johnny Manziel from a literal perspective. He's simply saying that anything that distracts you from the task at hand, which is the job of being an NFL player, can be to your detriment. And we all understood that that's something that we have to be concerned about with Johnny Manziel, not because of his dedication or lack thereof while he's participating, when he's studying film, when it's time to go to work, etc., but because he's Johnny Manziel and he likes to party just as hard as he plays. Even people like yourself, Skip, who are tremendous supporters of him, have been on the record saying it's a concern you have. You're rolling up a $20 bill. You know, you're sitting on some little balloon bubble, whatever it was. You know, looking inebriated, whether you were or not, we don't know. These kind of things raised your eyebrows, along with that of the Cleveland Browns, to the point where the owner had to tell him to chill, or the coach had to tell him to calm down. If you're Reggie Bush, from afar, you're reading this stuff, you're seeing this stuff, somebody asked you a question, you gave a response. It's not like you're saying the guy doesn't work hard. You're simply saying these are the kind of things you have to watch out for, because if you fall victim to it, you might end up having a rough road like I've had.
Okay.
And I appreciate that.
Okay, the reason I don't is because Reggie doesn't know Johnny's situation. I don't think Johnny's...
Neither do we.
Okay, but I have a better feel than Reggie does. I've done some homework here, and I've been clear with you. If alcohol becomes an issue, I got a big problem with that. I'm not sure that it is. I've had my doubts or my suspicions about it. But I don't think Johnny's friends lead him astray. Johnny is his own man, and he is his own partier.
I believe
he does
that.
what he wants to do. It's Johnny's choice. But when it's time to work, I don't think his partying is distracting him from his football concentration.
Yeah, but Reggie Bush is not the first guy to come along, Skip, and say Johnny might need to be careful about the company he keeps. We've heard Chris Carter say it. We've heard Coach Herm Edwards say it. We've heard, other NFL aficionados for the network allude to it, along with various other networks, whether it's the NFL Network or CBS, anybody else. You see people alluding to these things. All I'm saying is we can't victimize Bush for simply pointing out, look, if this stuff that's been put out there, if that's true, you got to watch yourself. That's all he was saying. I'm saying there's no reason to personalize it on that level, because I didn't take it that way. I just took it as one contemporary trying to look out for another. That's all I took it as.
That's the first time I've ever heard Reggie just called Bush. And it stopped me in my tracks for a second. Bush.
As opposed to Reggie.
Oh, Reggie Bush.
The Chargers beat the Cowboys 27-7 in last night's preseason opener, and the Chargers quarterback started the game a perfect 12 for 12, didn't even throw an incomplete pass until the fourth quarter. Brandon Weeden, however, wasn't too shabby either, going 13 of 17 for 107 yards and a touchdown in the first half. Skip, what'd you learn about your team?
Stephen A. Smith, do you want the good news or the bad news first?
I wasn't sure there was good news, but go ahead.
There's some good news here. I said before that draft that Brandon Weeden can play in the National Football League. I never said he would be great, but I thought he could be pretty good. And in a sorry situation in Cleveland going back a couple of years ago, as a rookie starter, I thought he was pretty good. Wound up with 14 touchdown passes to 17 picks, had 3 300-yard-plus games, went 5-10 as a starter. It was a sorry situation, but I thought he had his moments, and he also had some rocky moments. Last night, he had some terrific moments. Loved his poise, loved the rollout throw for the touchdown back against the grain to James Hanna, Oklahoma State to Oklahoma. Loved that. And obviously, with Tony Romo at age 34 coming off back surgery, Brandon Weeden may have to play some games this year, and I think he will be pretty good instead of Tony Romo if he has to be. Now, for the bad news. I honestly now believe that last year's worst in the NFL defense might be even worse this year. It just might be worse. Again, it's only the first preseason game. Now I'm using my case against me here, you know. But Stephen A., in his short stint, Phillip Rivers goes 4 for 4. It's like picking cherries, you know, 4 for 4 for 61 yards. San Diego rolls up almost 400 yards, 24 first downs. The final score of 27-7 should have been 34-7. But Ryan Matthews on first and goal at the 1-yard line fumbled as he went into the end zone for what could have been the 34-7 touchdown. And I'm looking at this, and it looks worse than last year. And that kid they drafted in the second round, DeMarcus Lawrence, who I thought was maybe pretty good coming out of Boise State because they traded up to get him. Now they're saying he could be out as long as 3 months with a bad foot. So no Sean Lee, no chance. That's what I saw.
Skip Bayless, it was a preseason game. Now, I understand there were a bevy of players that didn't play for the Dallas Cowboys. We all understand that. 5 projected opening day starters didn't play on the defensive side of the ball yesterday. We'll get that. We'll throw that out there, okay? But the Dallas Cowboys defense gave up a 70-yard touchdown pass from Kellen Clemens to Dontrell Inman. A 70-yard pass. That's number one. Number two, how many yardage did they give up? 395 yards, Skip, in a preseason game. And the only thing that we can say about that is that that's an improvement on the 415 yards they gave up last year. Oh, by the way, Skip Bayless, 5 times they gave up 150 or more yards rushing last year. They gave it up last night, 152 yards. And, oh, by the way, the San Diego Chargers did not throw an incomplete pass until the fourth quarter. I mean, this is unbelievable, man. I don't even know what to say. You know, listen, I can't judge the offense. Tony Romo didn't play. So because of that, you know his boy Jason Witten couldn't play. Because I'm not going to play without you, Tony Romo. Des Bryant got the night off. DeMarco Murray got the night off. We understand we can't really judge the Dallas Cowboys offense. Defensively, even though 5 projected starters didn't play, the numbers are still what they are. They're getting picked apart in single coverage. They're getting picked apart in zone coverage. I mean, you know, you see 5 defenders around some dude and somehow he wiggles his way through and runs for an additional 10 to 15 yards. These are the Cowboys, man. I don't even know what to say, Skip. It's just funny. It just really, really is, man.
Well,
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
I once again saw what I think will be the best offensive line in all of pro football. I saw a backup quarterback who's a 1A kind of quarterback who has started games and been pretty successful in this league. So I'm looking at what still, if you add the firepower that was missing at the skill positions last night, I think Dallas's offense could be the best in the NFL.
I like Whedon a lot, and
Thank you.
My condolences to him and his family because he's going to be contaminated by the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh,
I mean, the fact, trust me when I tell you, let Tony Romo go down and Brandon Whedon get in that offense, even behind that stout offensive line, and watch what happens to him. Let me tell you something, man, it's inevitable. It's just inevitable. You can see the evidence already. First preseason game, week 1 of the preseason, and this is what we get. Same old stuff, different day. It just is what it is, man.
Yeah, but
it just is what it is.
It was so much fun to watch. It's so exciting.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
For Cowboys fans, maybe. I don't know. Stephen A. just downright giddy right there.
They are entertaining. They are entertaining.
A giddy Stephen A.
You got me there.
Cleveland got love. Multiple reports confirm the Cavs will indeed trade number 1 overall picks Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett to the Timberwolves for Kevin Love, a move that shows LeBron James is more powerful than a Sharknado. Skip, how good are the Cavs now?
Stephen A. Smith, I'm here to suggest to you that right here, right now, my San Antonio Spurs would beat in a playoff series LeBron's new team in Cleveland even worse than the Spurs beat LeBron's Miami team in the NBA Finals. I'm not sold the way you are sold on this. I see a first-year head coach with no NBA coaching experience. I see very little playoff experience outside of LeBron, of course, and Varejao, who looks to me like a beat-up, sort of breaking down 32-year-old player. It's not the same player LeBron played with in his first go-round in Cleveland. I see a Kevin Love, who in player efficiency rating in crunch time last year, in clutch time, he was ranked 79th of 198 players that qualified. And I see a Kyrie Irving, who I think will be the big shot taker and maker on this team, who needs the basketball in his hands. And I'm not sure how he and LeBron will start to vibe. I think that'll be a rough transition. And then I see a team that, outside of LeBron, who plays defense? Who protects the rim on this team? I don't see it. So I think people are overrating just how spectacular and invincible this team will be.
Well, don't accuse me of it, Skip Bayless, because I didn't say the Cavaliers would win the NBA championship. I said they would be the favorites to come out of the East, and that's essentially by default, because I think with Paul George going down, Indiana is out of the mix. I don't think the Knicks are ready yet, nor do I think Atlanta, Charlotte, Brooklyn are these guys. I don't think they're ready yet, even though Brooklyn would be in the mix with a healthy Brook Lopez back. I think that the Cavs deserve the edge over Chicago because I need to see that Derrick Rose is going to stay healthy. That's my position. If Derrick Rose is healthy, then to me it's a toss-up between Cleveland and Chicago because Chicago can defend. And the acquisition of Pau Gasol to pair with a healthy Derrick Rose in that system, I think could bode very, very well for the Chicago Bulls. And even though I would pick Cleveland because of LeBron, it would still be a pick'em, a toss-up. But I don't believe the champion will come out of the East. I don't think these teams are better than the San Antonios, the Oklahoma Cities, dare I say even the Los Angeles Clippers. I'm not sold on that yet. So I'm sorry, I just want to be clear. I think that Cleveland is upgraded. I think they should be the favorites to come out of the East with this lineup. Unless Derrick Rose is back to being Derrick Rose. But that doesn't mean they would win the West. I wouldn't pick them to beat San Antonio either.
Are you sweeping what's left of the Miami Heat under your carpet right now?
I just don't believe that Dwyane Wade is going to be the Dwyane Wade of old. If Dwyane Wade, his knees are healthy, it's a different ball game because he's a superstar when healthy. I'm just not sure when you have no cartilage in your knees that you can return back to what you used to be. That's my trepidation about Dwyane Wade. Nothing else, especially not his game. And I think Chris Bosh may be even better, just not $118 million better. He's more like the $88 million, not $118 million. I told you he should take his agent out. He should Christmas shop for his agent for the next 10 years. And cook Thanksgiving dinner for Henry Thomas, too. That's what he needed to do after that job he did.
I am not writing off the Miami Heat next year.
Stephen A. is
They'll make the playoffs.
Hey,
They'll make the playoffs.
Say hello to Ryan Ruocco on the last show.